The nation has watched in horror as a disgruntled and disgraced ex-cop methodically attempts to murder his way through the Los Angeles Police Department. Well, watching in horror except for the people who are cheering him on. I'm Steve Green. This is Trifecta, and here with me now to take a look at the latest criminal insanity from the American left, Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. All right, gents, at our sister site, the PJ Tatler, Robert Wargus estimates that the comments at the Huffington Post, that beacon of mainstream American liberalism, the comments there are running 9-1 in favor of alleged killer Chris Dorner, who's on a mission, so he says, to kill cops. Now, Bill, one of the comments Robert dug up, and there are hundreds like it, said, and this is a quote, "Awesome, this is great. The militarized domestic police finally getting a taste of their own medicine when one of their own insane number turn on them." Is this just some guy spouting off on the internet, or is this commenter a symptom of a bigger problem, do you think?
He's both. Well, first of all, he's one of these internet basement cowards that talks about truth to power. He's one of these guys that said, I hate the effing police and those pigs and those other things, and when they get pulled over for speeding, it's like, yes, officer, I'm sorry, sir, I beg your pardon, sir, no, sir, I promise, sir. That's the beginning of this. But honestly, you have to look at this as the disease of the left. This is why, by the way, they are so sure that the Tea Party is a violent, racist, hateful, subversive organization, because in their own hearts, they're violent, racist, subversive, hateful people themselves. I am never, ever, ever cease to be amazed, Steve, at the level of projection on the left. And this guy, by the way, Joe, what's his name? If he ever got in trouble, somebody's breaking in his house, he'd call the cops faster than you could say Jack Robinson.
Well, after he changed his pants, I'm sure. Scott, it's been more than 20 years since the first President Bush bragged that we'd finally gotten over Vietnam syndrome in the wake of the first Gulf War. But I don't think that's true. Because also at HuffPo, another commenter wrote that Dorner, and this is another quote, is a product of his environment and training. This man was a police officer and a professional soldier. He was trained to use violence to resolve conflicts. LAPD is just reaping what it has sown. Now, that's straight out of the 1968 hippie playbook, isn't it?
How many of these guys are there out of the countless hundreds of thousands or millions of people who have served in uniform, who have been trained to use automatic and semi-automatic weapons? How many of these guys run amok? How many of these guys go on rampages, shooting rampages? It's an absurd claim. It's an absurd claim because there are a lot of people who haven't been through all that kind of training. If you look back at the history of mass killers and the people who go on these kinds of rampages that have nothing to do with the military and nothing to do with the police. You know, this whole thing, when you read these comments, it is what Occupy Wall Street aspired to but didn't have the guts to do.
Wow. And you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, Scott, because later in this week, we're going to talk about one of America's greatest living soldiers, and that's going to be a nice counterpoint to this. Bill, if you've read Dorner's Manifesto, and I've gone through the thing, it's easy to dismiss the guy as crazy, but in there it is a pretty typical laundry list of left-wing wants, more Obama, more gun control, the works. So here we have a genuinely politically motivated killer. So I have to ask you, how did Sarah Palin make him kill 2 people in cold blood?
She probably referenced Target department stores, and the sight of the bullseye made him go completely insane, and it was that rhetoric of hate that caused him to snap, and it's not really his fault after all. Look, there are people, we see this with the Newtown shootings and Aurora shootings. When you have 300 million people, some of them are just going to break and they're going to snap, and that's the way it is. I'm not surprised by this guy, because like every other product, people fail. They have faulty hearts. The part of this that's shocking is not a guy went nuts and is shooting cops. The part of that's shocking is that 9 out of 10 people on the premier left-wing site in the country, in the world probably, favor this kind of mass murder. That last guy's handle was Mr. Rational. Mr. Rational is talking about murdering people because of perceived injustices in the LAPD. Yeah, that's the rational way to solve things. Just go out and back murderers, you lowlifes.
Yeah, the reality-based community. Scott, the hacker group Anonymous read Dorner's manifesto, and apparently they liked what they saw there. The group attacked the LAPD website and endorsed Dorner's actions, saying, quote, "No one is above the law," except, I guess, for Chris Dorner.
And the people at Anonymous, who apparently can, hack with impunity, and it's not a problem for them. This has some appeal, I think, to the people on the left, because these are the same people who are attracted to movies where some renegade, some rogue breaks away from the police force or from the CIA or whatever, and goes undercover and goes dark and then goes on some sort of rampage, and the whole story is about how they try to track him down. But I think if anything, this story, while it's being painted as something that should be, I'm sure the president may even use it as an anti-gun illustration, it points up the need for you and I to be able to defend ourselves. This guy is after the police, and they can't stop him. What's going to happen when they're after you?
Now, that's a scary thought. You know what, folks? We are in big trouble here, our country and our culture, because the venom spewed by the left today is a symptom of a deep, deep problem. And it starts from a president who pals around with a convicted, America-hating terrorist, to the unbiased journalist who just blithely asserts that America requires fundamental transformation, to the famous actor who takes Arab oil money to fund his anti-fracking movie. These are the people who inspire random people on the internet. Now, however imperfectly they accomplish it, the police are tasked with protecting American life, liberty, and property. So don't be too surprised when the left cheers on a cop killer. They're taking their cues from the White House, from the mainstream media, and from Hollywood. So we've got to take all that back. For PJTV, I'm Steve Green.